The loud sound of the alarm clock broke the quiet in the room, waking Natalie from her restless sleep. She reached out to turn it off, but her fingers were shaking, and it took her a little longer to find the right button. She sat up in bed and looked at the small stick on her bedside table. It was a pregnancy test, and it showed 2 pink lines. That meant she was going to have a baby. The truth hit her again, just as hard as when she first saw the result. Natalie Harper, 28 years old, worked as an assistant to the big boss of a famous technology company in Boston. And the father of her baby? It was her boss, the rich and powerful Alexander Reeves. She let out a deep breath and got up to get ready for another workday at Reeves Innovations. As she cleaned up her room, her mind went back to the night that changed everything. It happened about 6 weeks ago, at a big party celebrating the company's new invention, the Reeves VR. It was a special virtual reality device that everyone was excited about. There was loud music, lots of talking, and glasses of champagne everywhere. Alexander, who was always serious and distant, seemed different that night. His blue eyes looked bright and full of energy. When he pulled Natalie into a quiet corner, she couldn't resist him. One thing led to another, and they ended up in his office on the top floor of the building. The room had big glass walls that showed the entire city, but Natalie only had eyes for Alexander. That night, for the first time, they forgot about their roles as boss and assistant. Natalie shook her head to clear her thoughts as she stepped into the elevator of the tall Reeves Innovations building. The building, made of shiny glass and steel, stood proudly in the middle of the city. It was a symbol of Alexander's intelligence and hard work. When Natalie reached the top floor, she took a deep breath, fixed her blouse, and walked toward her desk. She was thankful that no one could see any signs of her pregnancy yet. "Good morning, Miss Harper." The deep, familiar voice made her stop in her tracks. Alexander stood in the doorway of his office, looking sharp in his dark gray suit. His blue eyes quickly scanned her, just like they always did. But today, Natalie felt like he could see right through her, as if he knew her secret. "Good morning, Mr. Reeves," she answered, making sure her voice didn't shake, even though she was nervous inside. "I need you to set up a video call with our investors in Tokyo this afternoon. Also, I need the financial reports for the last quarter on my desk by noon," he said in his usual serious tone. "Of course, sir. Anything else?" Natalie asked while turning on her computer. Alexander paused for a moment and looked at her closely. "Are you feeling okay, Miss Harper? You look a little pale." Natalie's heart started beating fast. Did he suspect something? "I'm fine, Mr. Reeves. I just didn't sleep well last night," she replied with a small smile. He nodded, but he didn't seem fully convinced. "All right, I'll be in my office if you need me." When the door closed, Natalie let out a breath she didn't even know she was holding. She stared at her computer screen, but the words and numbers blurred. How was she supposed to keep working when she was carrying the baby of the most powerful man in the company? And he didn't even know. The morning passed quickly as Natalie answered calls, sent emails, and attended meetings. She worked like a robot, her mind jumping between her job and the big secret inside her. A few times she found her hand resting on her stomach, as if protecting her little secret. While she prepared the financial reports for Alexander, she thought about how ironic it all was. She was pregnant with the child of a man who was famous for being smart and powerful, but had no time for relationships. Alexander Reeves was known for being cold and distant. He had built his company from nothing and made it into a big success, but at the cost of his personal life. People whispered about his love life, but no one had ever meant anything serious to him. And now, Natalie was carrying his child. She knew she had to tell him, not just because it was the right thing to do, but because soon it would be impossible to hide. But she was afraid of losing her job, afraid of how he would react, and afraid of the future. At noon, Natalie picked up the reports and walked toward Alexander's office. She knocked softly. "Come in," his deep voice called. Natalie entered the large office where the big glass windows showed a breathtaking view of the city. But she wasn't looking at the view. She was looking at Alexander. He was on the phone, standing by the window. He motioned for her to wait and continued his conversation. Natalie stood still, holding the reports tightly against her chest. She watched him, noticing the tension in his shoulders and the way his hand curled into a fist. Finally, he hung up and turned toward her. "The reports, I assume?" Natalie nodded and handed them over. When their fingers brushed for a moment, a spark ran through her, making her pull away quickly. Alexander raised an eyebrow but didn't say anything. He started flipping through the reports. "Excellent work, as always, Miss Harper," he murmured. Natalie's heart pounded. This was her chance. "Mr. Reeves," she started, her voice shaking, "I need to talk to you about something important." Alexander looked up, curious. "Yes?" Before she could speak, the door burst open. Daniel Thompson, the company's CFO, rushed in. "Alex, we have a problem. The Tokyo investors are pulling out of the Reeves VR project. We need to act fast." Alexander's face changed. His full attention turned to the crisis. "Understood. Miss Harper, we'll talk later. Cancel all my appointments for the afternoon." Natalie's moment was gone. She nodded and walked out of the office, feeling defeated. From her desk, she could hear the worried voices of the executives inside. At that moment, the truth hit her harder than ever. She was carrying the baby of the busiest man in Boston, a man who barely had time to breathe, let alone deal with an unexpected pregnancy. She placed a hand on her belly. No matter what, she had to find a way to handle this. The rest of the day flew by. Everyone was busy with the crisis, and Alexander's office was filled with important people going in and out. By 6 p.m., Natalie packed her things and looked at Alexander's closed office door. He would probably work all night. As she waited for the elevator, she thought about how quickly her life had changed. Just weeks ago, she was a normal assistant. Now she had a secret that could change everything. The elevator doors opened, and Natalie stepped in. In the mirror, she saw a woman who looked scared and unsure, but she straightened her shoulders. Tomorrow, she would tell him. No matter what. The next morning was cold and rainy, matching Natalie's mood. She woke up early, feeling sick and nervous. Today was the day. She had to tell Alexander. As she got ready, she practiced different ways to say it. Should she be direct, or should she start with small talk? Nothing seemed right for such a big secret. The drive to work felt short, and soon she was in the elevator again. But when the doors opened, the office was filled with nervous whispers. "Did you hear?" Jennifer from marketing asked her. The Japanese investors pulled out completely. Mr. Reeves is furious. Natalie's heart sank. Why did this crisis have to happen today? Before she could think, Alexander's voice called from his office. "Miss Harper, in my office. Now." Natalie took a deep breath and stepped inside. Alexander looked angry. "Cancel all my meetings for 2 weeks. I'm flying to Tokyo tonight." Natalie's stomach dropped. 2 weeks? She couldn't wait that long. "Mr. Reeves, I really need to talk to you. Alone," she said, her voice trembling. "Miss Harper," she began to say, her voice shaking a little, "I really need to talk to you about something very important. Can we speak in private?" Alexander looked at her like she had said something silly. "Miss Harper, in case you haven't noticed, we are in the middle of a big problem. Any personal talks will have to wait until I come back." Natalie felt tears forming in her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. This was not the time to cry. She nodded. "I understand, sir. I'll take care of everything." She walked out of the office feeling very sad. Back at her desk, Natalie started to work. She canceled Alexander's meetings, changed his schedule, and made sure everything was in order. But her mind was somewhere else. What would she do now? In 2 weeks, her tummy would start to show. Someone in the office might notice she was going to have a baby before Alexander even knew. And if he came back from his trip happy, would he listen to her? Or would he still be too busy with work? The day was very busy. Alexander ran from one meeting to another, giving orders and asking for reports. Natalie worked hard, but she felt very tired and sick. Around 3 in the afternoon, as she went to get some papers, she felt dizzy. She leaned against the wall, taking deep breaths. "Natalie, are you okay?" A kind voice spoke. She turned and saw Lily, the nice lady from HR. Lily looked worried. "I'm fine, Lily. Just a little tired," Natalie said, trying to smile. Lily didn't look convinced. "You're as pale as a ghost. Sit down for a while." Before Natalie could say no, Lily helped her sit and gave her some water. "Thank you," Natalie whispered as she drank. Lily sat beside her. "Natalie, I don't mean to pry, but you haven't been feeling well for weeks. Are you sure you're okay?" Natalie wanted to tell Lily her secret. She wanted someone to share her worries with, but she knew she couldn't. Fewer people knowing was better. "I really appreciate your kindness, Lily, but I promise I'm just stressed with work," she said. Lily nodded, but still looked worried. "Well, if you ever need to talk, I'm here." Natalie thanked her again and went back to work, feeling more alone than ever. That evening, at 7 p.m., Natalie was in the building lobby. She gave Alexander his plane ticket and last-minute papers. "The car will pick you up in Tokyo. I made sure everything is set for you," she explained, keeping her voice steady. Alexander, busy looking at his phone, nodded. "Great job, Miss Harper. Keep things in order here and update me." He was about to leave when Natalie took a deep breath and tried again. "Mr. Reeves, I really need to talk to you before." "Whatever it is, Miss Harper, it will have to wait," Alexander interrupted. 2 weeks will go by fast. We'll talk when I get back." And then he left, stepping into his car, disappearing into the rainy Boston night. Natalie watched him go, feeling lost. 2 more weeks. She had to keep her secret for 2 more weeks. Sighing, she went back to her office. She needed to stay busy or she would go crazy thinking. Sitting at her desk, she started tidying up the papers left behind. She thought about how much her life had changed. Just months ago, she was working hard, dreaming about her career. Now she was going to have a baby, and the father was her boss. Natalie wondered what her mom would say. Her mom, Sandra Harper, had raised her alone, working hard to give Natalie a good life. 5 years ago, Sandra had passed away from cancer, but not before seeing Natalie get her dream job. "You're strong, Natalie. No matter what happens, you'll get through it," her mom used to say. Tears filled Natalie's eyes. She wanted to believe her mother's words, but she felt lost. While working, she found an old photo. It was from 3 years ago at a big company event. Alexander stood in the middle, smiling, surrounded by his team. Natalie was there too, smiling happily. How things had changed. She put the photo away and sighed. She needed a plan. She made a list. 1. Wait for Alexander to return and tell him the truth. 2. Send him an email or call him in Tokyo. 3. Quit her job and disappear. 4. Try to hide the pregnancy. None of the options were perfect. What if Alexander got angry and fired her? Calling him felt too cold. Disappearing was tempting but unfair. Hiding wouldn't work forever. Frustrated, she crumpled the paper and threw it away. She needed fresh air. She went for a walk. The rain had stopped and the city lights sparkled. Without realizing it, she reached the Boston Public Garden. She sat on a bench, staring at her company's tall building. She placed a hand on her belly, feeling protective of her baby. No matter what happened, she loved this little life growing inside her. Then, an idea came to her. She couldn't control Alexander's reaction, but she could control her own actions. She stood up with a new feeling of strength. She wouldn't just wait, she would prepare. The next day, she would see a doctor, learn about pregnancy, and make a budget. She walked home, feeling lighter. The future was still scary, but for the first time in weeks, she felt ready. At home, she looked in the mirror. She saw not just a secretary, but a strong woman. She placed a hand on her belly. "We'll be okay," she whispered. "I promise." The next few days were busy. She went to a doctor. In the waiting room, she saw other pregnant women and finally let herself feel excited. Natalie Harper? A nurse called. The doctor, Elena Rodriguez, was kind. Lying on the bed, Natalie saw her baby on the ultrasound for the first time. The tiny heartbeat filled the room. Tears rolled down her cheeks. "Congratulations," Dr. Rodriguez said. "You are 10 weeks pregnant. The baby is healthy." Natalie left the clinic with baby pictures and a list of things to do. She read books about pregnancy and planned carefully. At work, she kept busy, making sure everything ran smoothly while Alexander was away. A week passed, then 10 days. One evening, Natalie's phone rang. It was Alexander. "Miss Harper, prepare a full report on all our projects. I'm flying back tomorrow night. I want a meeting in the morning." Natalie's heart pounded. "Of course, Mr. Reeves. How did things go in Tokyo?" There was silence. Then Alexander spoke, sounding tired. "Things didn't go as planned. We'll talk when I return. Good night, Miss Harper." The call ended. Natalie stared at the phone. Alexander was coming back early, and it didn't sound like good news. She stayed up all night working. As the sun rose, she finished preparing everything. She needed to be ready. Before heading to the office, she looked at herself in the mirror. Her belly was starting to show. She made a decision. Today, after the meeting, she would tell Alexander the truth. No more waiting. At the office, the news spread fast. Everyone whispered about Alexander's return. At exactly 9 a.m., Alexander walked into the meeting room. He looked very tired, with dark circles under his eyes. Natalie felt worried when she saw him like this. "Good morning, everyone," Alexander said. Even though he looked exhausted, his voice was strong. "I've been in Tokyo for 2 weeks trying to fix our deal with the Japanese investors for the Reeves VR project, but I don't have good news." Everyone in the room started whispering, looking nervous. Natalie felt her stomach twist, and it wasn't just because she was going to have a baby. The investors decided to pull out of the deal completely, Alexander continued. They also have concerns about the company's direction. Because of this, our stock prices have dropped a lot in the last 2 days. The room became very quiet. Natalie saw the shocked faces of her coworkers and felt bad for them. Alexander took a deep breath. "I won't lie to you. We are in trouble. But Reeves Innovations has never given up before, and we won't start now. We will make a new plan, fix our mistakes, and come back stronger." Then he looked at Natalie. "Miss Harper, please update everyone on our other projects." Natalie stood up. Everyone in the room turned to look at her. Her hands were shaking a little, but she started speaking about the company's projects. As she talked, she felt more confident. She knew this work well. For almost an hour, she explained the projects, what was working, what needed improvement, and what they could do better. When she finished, there was silence. Then Alexander spoke. "Great job, Miss Harper." He gave a small, tired smile. "Not everything is lost. We will focus on the projects that are doing well and use our resources wisely." The meeting continued for hours. People made plans and discussed ideas. When it finally ended, it was past noon. Everyone left the room talking about the company's problems and how to solve them. Natalie gathered her papers. She noticed Alexander was still sitting at the table, rubbing his temples. "Mr. Reeves," she said softly, "can I get you something? Maybe coffee?" Alexander looked at her with his tired blue eyes. "Actually, Miss Harper, I need something stronger than coffee. How about lunch? We need to talk about how to handle this situation." Natalie's heart started beating faster. This was the moment she had been waiting for and also dreading. "Of course, sir. I know a great restaurant nearby." 20 minutes later, they sat at a quiet table in a fancy Italian restaurant. Alexander ordered red wine, but Natalie only asked for water. He raised an eyebrow but didn't say anything. As they waited for their food, Alexander explained what happened in Tokyo. He talked about the problems and why the investors backed out. Natalie listened carefully, asking questions and sharing her thoughts. Finally, their food arrived. Alexander stopped talking about work and looked at Natalie. You have done an amazing job while I was away, Natalie. I don't know what I'd do without you. Natalie felt her face get warm. Thank you, Mr. Reeves. I really love my job. Alexander nodded. He took a sip of his wine. Natalie, can I call you Natalie? I don't think I've ever properly thanked you for all the work you do, for the company and for me. Natalie was surprised. In 3 years of working for him, this was the first time Alexander called her by her first name. Thank you, Mr. Reeves. That means a lot to me. Alexander smiled. It was a real smile that made his tired face look brighter. Please call me Alexander. After everything we've been through, I think we can stop being so formal, at least for now. Natalie's heart pounded. This was it. Now or never. Alexander, she began, her voice shaking. There's something important I need to tell you. Alexander's face turned serious. Is it about the company? Something I don't know? Natalie shook her head and took a deep breath. No. It's personal. She hesitated, then said, I'm pregnant. The silence that followed felt endless. Natalie watched Alexander's face as he went through different emotions, shock, confusion, and then realization. Pregnant, he whispered. And the father is. You, Natalie confirmed, barely able to speak. Alexander leaned back in his chair, looking stunned. The launch party? It wasn't really a question. Natalie nodded, not sure what else to say. For a long time, neither of them spoke. The sounds of the restaurant faded away like they were in their own world. Finally, Alexander spoke. How far along are you? Almost 11 weeks, Natalie said. I wanted to tell you earlier, but with everything going on, Alexander raised his hand to stop her. Have you been to the doctor? Is the baby okay? Natalie was surprised at the concern in his voice. Yes, I went last week. Everything is fine. The baby is healthy. Alexander nodded slowly. He stared into the distance, lost in thought. Then he looked at Natalie with serious eyes. Natalie, I need time to process this. You understand, don't you? With everything happening at the company. Natalie forced a smile. Of course I understand. I just thought you should know. Alexander reached across the table and held Natalie's hand. She was startled by the gesture. Thank you for telling me. I promise we'll talk more. Just give me a few days. Natalie nodded. She felt both relieved and worried. This wasn't the reaction she feared, but it also wasn't the one she secretly hoped for. The rest of lunch passed quickly. They talked about work and the company, but there was a new tension between them. Something unspoken but very real. Back at the office, Alexander stopped before entering his private room. Natalie, he said softly, it's going to be okay. We'll figure it out. Then he walked into his office, leaving Natalie alone with her swirling thoughts and an uncertain future. The next few days were stressful. The office was buzzing with emergency meetings and phone calls as everyone tried to fix the problems from Tokyo. Natalie felt like she was on an emotional roller coaster. She was relieved that Alexander knew about the baby, but she was also anxious about what he would do next. On the third day, Natalie arrived at the office early. To her surprise, Alexander was already there. His office light was on. She knocked softly. Come in, his tired voice called. She walked in and saw him sitting behind his messy desk, looking like he hadn't slept in days. Good morning, Mr. R. She stopped herself. Alexander. He looked at her. Good morning, Natalie. Please sit. Her heart raced. Was this finally the conversation she had been waiting for? Natalie, Alexander said gently, I've thought a lot about everything, the company, the future, and the baby. I want you to know I'm not angry or disappointed, just surprised. Natalie let out a breath she didn't realize she was holding. That's good to hear. Alexander walked to the window. We need a fresh start. I want to change Reeves Innovations. We should focus on helping people, healthcare, education, sustainability, and I want you to help me lead it. Natalie was shocked. Me? But I'm just your secretary. Alexander smiled. You were never just my secretary, Natalie. Before she could respond, there was a knock. Daniel, the CFO, rushed in, looking pale. Alex, we have a big problem. The council wants to remove you as CEO. The room fell silent. Natalie watched Alexander closely. She expected him to look scared or angry, but instead, she saw something else in his eyes: determination. "Good," Alexander said in a strong voice. "This is the perfect chance for us to show our new idea for the company." Daniel stared at him like he was crazy. "New idea? Alex, you don't understand. They want you out." "No, Daniel, you don't understand," Alexander replied, a smile appearing on his face. "They want change. Well, let's give them a change they never expected." He turned to Natalie. "What do you say, partner? Are you ready to turn this company upside down?" Natalie felt a rush of excitement. It was crazy, it was risky, but it was the kind of challenge she had always dreamed of. More than that, it was a chance to build a better future, not just for the company, but for her son. With a determined smile, she stood up. "I'm in. Let's do it." Daniel looked at them, confused. "Do what exactly?" Alexander placed a hand on Natalie's shoulder, making her shiver slightly. "Save Reeves Innovations, Daniel, and maybe in the process, change the world." The next few hours were busy. Natalie and Alexander worked together, making plans, creating presentations, and thinking of ways to convince the board. The energy between them was strong. It wasn't just about work. There was something more. As they worked, Natalie noticed something different about Alexander. He wasn't the cold, distant man she once knew. Now, he was passionate, focused, and even caring. He kept asking if she needed a break, if she was feeling okay, always looking at her with concern. Soon, it was time for the board meeting. The office was filled with tension. People were whispering, wondering what was happening behind the closed doors of Alexander's office. Finally, after hours of preparation, Alexander and Natalie stepped out. Alexander looked tired but strong. Natalie felt more confident than ever. "Are you ready?" Alexander asked her softly, just for her to hear. Natalie placed a hand on her belly and nodded. "We're ready." Alexander smiled. For a moment, it looked like he wanted to say something, but before he could, Daniel hurried over. "The council is ready." As they walked to the meeting room, Natalie felt the weight of the moment. It wasn't just about the company. It was about her, Alexander, and their unborn child. Outside the boardroom doors, Alexander turned to her. "Whatever happens in there, Natalie, I'm glad we're doing this together." With those words, he opened the doors, and they stepped inside to face their biggest challenge yet. The meeting room was silent as Natalie and Alexander entered. The council members looked at them with different emotions: curiosity, doubt, and even anger. Natalie felt nervous, but Alexander gently touched her back, calming her. "Ladies and gentlemen," Alexander began confidently, "I know this meeting is about the future of Reeves Innovations. Before you decide anything, I ask for a chance to share a new vision for our company." Leonard Whitmore, the head of the board, leaned forward. He was an older man with sharp eyes. "Alexander, let's be honest. After the disaster in Tokyo, we don't trust your leadership anymore. What can you say to change that?" Alexander smiled. It was the kind of smile Natalie knew, one that meant he was about to surprise everyone. "I'm not going to tell you, Leonard," Alexander said. "I'm going to show you. Natalie, please." Natalie stepped forward, feeling all eyes on her. Taking a deep breath, she started the presentation. "Reeves Innovations has always led in technology, but lately we've forgotten something important: the impact of our technology on people's lives." She talked about the new plan, focusing on technology that helped health, education, and the environment. She showed financial data, market trends, and case studies. Slowly, the room changed. The board members who had been doubtful now looked interested, even Leonard Whitmore. When she finished, Alexander spoke again. "What Natalie has shown is not just a plan, it's a revolution. And to lead that revolution, I propose a change in leadership." He paused, meeting Natalie's eyes before looking back at the board. "I propose that Natalie Harper be promoted to co-CEO of Reeves Innovations, leading this company with me." Gasps filled the room. Natalie's heart pounded. They had discussed this before, but hearing it out loud felt unreal. Leonard Whitmore was the first to speak. Alexander, this is unexpected. Miss Harper is talented, but she's your secretary. How can we trust her with such an important role? Natalie knew it was time to tell the truth. She took a deep breath. Mr. Whitmore, there is something else you need to know. She paused, then said, I'm pregnant, and the father is Alexander Reeves. Silence. Natalie could almost hear the thoughts of the board members as they processed what she just said. Alexander stepped beside her, standing strong. I know this might sound complicated, but actually, it makes everything clear. Natalie is not only the best person to lead this company, she is also carrying its future. Leonard Whitmore stood up. This is madness, Alexander. This company is not a family business. No, it's not, Alexander replied. It's a company in crisis, and Natalie and I are the right people to save it. The room burst into arguments. Some people looked shocked. Others looked thoughtful. Then Patricia Lawson, one of the youngest board members, spoke. Let's calm down and think. Alexander and Natalie's idea is bold, but interesting. We can't deny that we need a change. Slowly, the discussion became more serious. The board asked questions, and Alexander and Natalie answered together. Their teamwork impressed even the most doubtful members. Finally, Leonard Whitmore called for a vote. Those in favor of the proposal, raise your hands. Natalie held her breath as hands started rising. 1, 2, 3. More and more hands went up. When the last hand rose, Natalie could hardly believe it. Leonard sighed. The council has decided to give this new plan a chance. Alexander, Miss Harper, you have 6 months to prove this can work. If not, we will take action. Understand? Alexander nodded. Crystal clear. As the board left, some glanced at Natalie and Alexander with curiosity. Others shook their heads in disbelief. When they were alone, Alexander turned to Natalie, smiling. We did it. Natalie felt tears in her eyes. Yes, we did. But what now? Alexander pulled her into a hug. Now we build the future, for the company, for us, and for our son. Natalie relaxed in his arms. There were still challenges ahead, but right now everything felt possible. When they separated, Alexander held her face gently. Natalie Harper, you are the most amazing woman I've ever met. Together, we're going to make history. Then he kissed her, a soft kiss filled with promise. Natalie knew her life would never be the same again. As they left the meeting room, employees whispered excitedly. Daniel was the first to approach. What happened? Alexander smiled. Big changes, Daniel. And tomorrow, we'll need everyone's help to make them real. As they walked toward the elevator, Alexander turned to Natalie. Dinner? I think we have a lot to talk about. Natalie smiled. Dinner sounds perfect. Natalie smiled, feeling very happy. Dinner was going to be perfect. As the elevator went down, taking them to their new life together, Natalie thought about her journey. She had started as a secretary and was now co-CEO. She had gone through a scary pregnancy, but now the future was full of hope. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but for the first time in a long time, she was excited to find out. The elevator reached the first floor with a soft ding and the doors opened. Holding hands, Natalie and Alexander stepped out, ready to face whatever came next. The sun was just rising when Natalie woke up. Her body was still getting used to the changes of pregnancy. She stretched slowly and looked around the unfamiliar room. It took her a moment to remember where she was, Alexander's apartment. The night before had been full of emotions. After leaving Reeves Innovations, they had dinner at a small Italian restaurant. They ate pasta and talked about their future, the company, the baby, and their life together. Alexander had asked her to stay at his apartment for the night. At first, Natalie hesitated, but then she said yes. Now she watched Alexander as he slept. She felt many different emotions all at once. Happiness, fear, excitement, and uncertainty. She got out of bed carefully, not wanting to wake him, and walked to the window. The apartment had a beautiful view of the Charles River. The Boston skyline was starting to light up with the first rays of the sun. It was a new day, not just in time, but in her life as well. Good morning. Alexander's deep voice surprised her. She turned to see him sitting up in bed, his hair messy from sleep, a soft smile on his face. Good morning, Natalie replied, blushing. Sorry, I didn't mean to wake you. Alexander shook his head and walked over to stand beside her. Don't apologize. This is a nice view to wake up to, he said, but his eyes were on her, not the city. Natalie felt her heartbeat faster at his gaze. Alexander, about last night, she began. Do you regret it? He asked softly, looking a little worried. No, Natalie answered quickly. I don't regret it. It's just everything is happening so fast. Yesterday morning, I was your secretary, and now, you're my partner. Alexander finished her sentence, taking her hands in his. In business and in life, if you want that. Natalie felt tears in her eyes. Pregnancy hormones, she thought. I want to, but Alexander, are you sure? This won't be easy. The company, the baby, us, there are so many challenges. Alexander smiled, and his smile always made her heart melt. Natalie Harper, if there's one thing I've learned in business, it's that the biggest rewards come from taking the biggest risks, and you, my dear, are worth every risk. Before Natalie could respond, Alexander's phone rang. He sighed, but answered it. It's Daniel, he said, covering the microphone. Probably about the press release. Natalie nodded, reality settling in. Go ahead. I need to stop by my apartment and get some clothes before we go to the office. Before speaking into the phone, Alexander looked at her and said, Let's have lunch together today. We can talk about our plans. Natalie smiled. I'd love that. As she got ready to leave, she listened to Alexander talk on the phone. She still couldn't believe how much her life had changed in just 24 hours. The drive to work felt strange. The streets looked the same, the people looked the same, but she felt like a completely different person. When she walked into the Reeves Innovations building, she noticed people whispering and staring at her. Good morning, Miss Harper, the receptionist said, her voice full of respect and curiosity. Or should I say, co-CEO? Natalie smiled, trying to hide her nervousness. Natalie is fine, Maggie, as always. When she reached the executive floor, she hesitated. Should she go to her old desk or straight to Alexander's office? Before she could decide, Lily from HR appeared. Natalie, Alexander asked me to show you your new office. My new office? Natalie asked, surprised. Yes, come on. As they walked, Natalie saw people looking at her. Some seemed impressed, others skeptical, and some resentful. She knew earning their respect would be hard. Natalie's new office was big and beautiful. The desk had fresh flowers with a card that read, To New Beginnings. Wow, Natalie whispered. Lily smiled. It's a lot to take in, isn't it? Look, I know it's not my business, but are you okay with all this? Natalie turned to her, feeling grateful. I am. It's scary and exciting, but I'm ready. Good. If you need anything, I'm here, Lily said before leaving. Natalie's day was full of meetings, calls, and emails. Everyone wanted to talk to her, executives, journalists, employees. She barely had time to breathe. By lunchtime, she was exhausted. When she met Alexander at a cafe, he noticed her tired face. Busy day? He asked. Natalie sighed. You have no idea. Everyone is looking at me, expecting me to lead about, and I don't even know where to start. Alexander took her hand. You're more than capable. Trust yourself. She nodded. And what about us? People are already talking. Let them, Alexander said firmly. We haven't done anything wrong. We're building something special in the company and between us. Don't let rumors bother you. Natalie smiled. You're right. Let's make this work. The rest of the day was a blur of meetings. Some people supported her ideas, but others doubted her. It was frustrating, but when she shared her vision for new projects, she saw some people getting excited. At the end of the day, she was exhausted but happy. When Alexander came to her office, he asked, How are you feeling? Natalie smiled. Tired, but good. I think we can really make a difference here. Alexander looked proud. I know we can, especially with you leading the way. She blushed. I'm not doing this alone. We're a team, remember? He took her hands. Yes, we are. in every way. He hesitated. Natalie, I know everything is moving fast, but would you like to have dinner with me tonight? A real dinner, just the two of us. Natalie's heart raced. After everything that had happened, this felt different, a real step forward. I'd love to, she said softly. As they walked out of the office, holding hands, Natalie felt hopeful. There would be challenges, but with Alexander by her side, she knew she could handle them. The future was unknown, but for the first time in a long time, she was excited for it. A new career, a new love, a new life growing inside her. It was all just beginning. A few weeks later, the news about Natalie's promotion and relationship with Alexander spread everywhere. One morning, she arrived at the office to find Lily from HR looking worried. You need to see this, Lily said, handing her a magazine. Natalie's heart sank. The headline read, Scandal at Reeves Innovations, Pregnancy, Promotion, and Prejudice. The article questioned her abilities and suggested favoritism. Oh no, Natalie whispered. Her phone rang. It was Alexander. Natalie, have you seen the article? I just did, she said, feeling sick. It's ridiculous. I'm calling our lawyers. Before Natalie could respond, Daniel, the finance director, rushed in. We have a problem, he said. Some of our biggest investors are thinking about pulling out. Natalie felt cold. Alexander, she said into the phone, we need you here now. The next few minutes were very busy. Natalie and Alexander met with Daniel and the other company leaders. They needed to make sure the people who gave them money to run the company were not scared. We need to tell the news, Alexander said. We must explain what is happening and show that we are working together. Natalie nodded but had an idea. What if we do more? What if we show people what our company really cares about? Everyone looked at her, waiting to hear more. We want to make technology that helps people, right? Natalie said. So let's prove it. Let's start a big new project, something that helps people and shows what we stand for. Alexander smiled at her with pride. What kind of project? Natalie's eyes lit up. An education program for poor children, something that helps kids who don't have the same chances as others. The room was quiet for a moment. Then, one by one, everyone started nodding. It's a big idea, Daniel said, but it could be the perfect way to change how people see us. Alexander smiled at Natalie, making her heart beat faster. I love it. Let's do it. The next hours were filled with planning. Natalie worked on the details of the project while Alexander talked to the investors and the news reporters. By the end of the day, Natalie felt so tired. She sat down in Alexander's office, feeling the weight of the day. Alexander knelt in front of her, looking worried. Are you okay? Maybe we should have skipped that last meeting. Natalie shook her head and smiled a little. I'm fine, just tired. Today was a lot. Alexander held her hands gently. Natalie, I'm sorry for all of this. You don't deserve this stress. Natalie was surprised by his words. Alexander, it's not your fault. We knew it would be hard. He hesitated. Sometimes I wonder if I did the right thing. Maybe I shouldn't have put you in this position. Natalie placed her hand on his face and made him look at her. Listen to me, Alexander Reeves. You didn't put me anywhere. We made this choice together. And yes, it's hard. But I believe in what we're building, both in the company and in our lives. It's worth it. Alexander stared at her with emotion in his eyes. Then he kissed her, a kiss full of love and hope. When they pulled away, he rested his forehead against hers. I don't know how I got so lucky to have you, Natalie Harper, but I promise I'll always try to be the best for you and our baby. Natalie smiled. We will get through this together, Alexander, one day at a time. Outside, the sun was setting over Boston. Natalie looked out the window, thinking about the future. She imagined a baby, their baby, growing up in a world they were helping to make better. What are you thinking about? Alexander asked, noticing her smile. Natalie squeezed his hand. The future, all the wonderful things ahead. Alexander smiled. With you, I feel like we can do anything. Natalie believed him. No matter what problems came, they would face them together. 6 months later, Natalie and Alexander were still working hard. Time passed quickly. One morning, Natalie woke up feeling her baby move inside her belly. She smiled and put her hand on her stomach. "Good morning, little one," she whispered. Next to her, Alexander woke up too. "Good morning to both of you," he said with a sleepy voice but a warm smile. Natalie turned to him. "Are you ready for the big day?" Alexander grinned. "More than ready. Today, we show the world what our company can do." Today was the launch of their new project, Project Horizon. It had started as just an idea, but now it was the biggest thing the company had ever done. The program would use cool technology to help poor children learn better. As Natalie got ready, she thought about the past months. At first, people had doubted her. The news reporters had written bad things. Some workers had not believed she could lead the company, but she proved them wrong. With Alexander's help, she handled every problem. Every doubt only made her stronger. And now, Project Horizon was ready to change lives. When they arrived at the company, the office was buzzing with excitement. Lily, their assistant, ran up to them. "Everything is ready. The news reporters are here. The schools are ready for the live demo." Natalie felt nervous, but excited. "Thank you, Lily. We couldn't have done this without you." Lily smiled. "You two did the hard work. I just cheered." Alexander put his arm around Natalie. A very important cheer. As they walked toward the event, Daniel came running. "I just got news," he said, almost bursting with excitement. "The board approved full funding for Project Horizon for 5 years. Natalie gasped, feeling tears in her eyes. "This means we can help even more children." "This is amazing," Alexander said, giving Daniel a big hug. Natalie was about to say something when she suddenly felt a sharp pain in her belly. She gasped and grabbed her stomach. Alexander was instantly at her side. "Natalie? Is it the baby?" She took a deep breath. "I think so, but it's too early. The baby isn't due for 2 more weeks." Daniel quickly called for an ambulance while Lily ran to grab Natalie's hospital bag. Alexander held Natalie's hands tightly. "Hey, look at me. It's going to be okay. Our little miracle just wants to be part of the big day." Despite the pain, Natalie laughed. Of course, stubborn just like his father. Everything happened quickly. The ambulance came. As Natalie was taken to the hospital, she saw Lily grabbing the microphone to explain the delay to the audience. Hours later, in a quiet hospital room, Natalie held her newborn baby in her arms. Alexander sat beside her, his arm around her, looking at their tiny son with love. "He's perfect," Alexander whispered, touching the baby's cheek. Natalie smiled, exhausted but happy. "Yes, he is. Our little Benjamin." They had picked the name together. Benjamin meant son of fortune, which felt just right for their little boy. There was a knock at the door. Lily walked in, followed by Daniel and their boss, Mr. Whitmore. "Are we interrupting?" Mr. Whitmore asked. "Not at all," Natalie said. "Come meet Benjamin." They all gathered around the baby, smiling and congratulating the new parents. Daniel cleared his throat. "We have good news. The launch was a huge success. The schools loved it. The press is writing great stories about it, and the company's value has gone up." Natalie felt happy, tears fill her eyes. "Really?" "Yes," Lily added. "And the best part? People believe in what we are doing now. They see that we truly care." Natalie looked at Benjamin, then at Alexander, and then at their friends. Her heart was full. "Thank you all," she said, "for believing in us." Alexander kissed her forehead. "This is just the beginning." Outside the hospital window, the city lights twinkled. Natalie thought about how far she had come. A few months ago, she had been just a nervous assistant. Now, she was a leader, a mother, and a woman ready to shape the future. As she held her baby close, she knew one thing for sure. The journey was just starting, and she couldn't wait to see what came next. Thanks for watching. If you like the story, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share your thoughts in the comments. Check out our other videos too. See you in the next one.